Dimitri Tishenko and Joseph Baker sat facing each other through a plate-glass window. Dimitri rubbed his bald head with his hands, fingering the wrinkles on his forehead. His skin was covered in an elaborate pattern of black tattoos. His face, his bare head, his hands, his eyelids, every movement, every breath, brought the ink figures to life, morphing the obsidian mosaic into a dizzying dance across his skin. He studied Baker through the glass window, his unkempt beard, his light brown sport coat and blue shirt, the way sweat droplets followed the rim of his glasses to drop into a small pool forming on the notebook page in front of him. Dimitri watched Baker reach for the black phone on the wall beside him, noticing the slight tremors in his hand. Dimitri took his own phone off the wall and put it to his ear, waiting for the man who had come to visit him in prison to speak. "Mr. Tishenko, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. I assume you know from my letters why I'm here?" "You've come to hear legend about tattoos, yes?" Dimitri said, his broken English laced with a thick Russian accent and the hollow rasp of a man who has spent his life smoking. "Do you think you can write story with shaking hand?" Baker's face turned red, and he wiped his free hand against his pants. "I hope I haven't offended you, Mr. Tishenko. This is my first time in a prison, and I have to admit, I'm a little nervous to be meeting you. I watched your RICO trial on television, but I'm afraid the camera didn't do your tattoos justice. It's a bit overwhelming to see them with my own eyes." "Don't apologize. I spend most of life trying to make people fear me. This is logical outcome." Baker nodded at this, removing his glasses to wipe the sweat off his forehead and frames. He paused before returning them to his face. "I heard the story of your rise through the ranks of the Russian mob, but I would like to hear from your perspective. I want to write a true account of the events surrounding the legend." "What have you heard about my story?" "I heard that every time you killed someone, you would get a tattoo to repent and preserve the memory of the victim. Your rise to power within the organization was mirrored by the glyphs on your skin. I think your sense of regret and pain makes you a tragic figure that readers will relate to. It gives your story an almost fairy tale-like quality to it, a sort of Cinderella tale of rags to riches." Dimitri was racked by a spell of laughter and hoarse coughs. "Cinderella and Red Mafiya? You have wrong fairy tale, Mr. Baker." His laughter subsided, and though he looked down at his wrinkled glyphed hands, his eyes were far away. "If you want to compare my life to fairy tale, you have to choose Russian story. There are no fairy godmothers in criminal underworld, only wolves. And the magic wands they give you are made of blue steel." "Wolves?" "My mother made perfect comparison when we were on boat coming to America. An old Russian fairy tale she used to tell me as child. If you want to hear true legend of my tattoos, we should start at the beginning, yes? When I came to America." Joseph Baker nodded and picked up his pen, pressing the point to the blank page in front of him. Dimitri was born a peasant boy in the Soviet Union near the end of World War II. His father had died in the war, and his mother was given a factory job by the new communist government. The struggle for food was always upon them, and life for young Dimitri was hard, leaving him sickly and weak. When he was 11, the area where he lived was involved in the Hungarian uprising. Fearing the coming fighting, his mother made a deal with the local crime boss to be smuggled into America by ship. On board, Dimitri sat on the floor with his knees drawn up to his chest, his back against the cold steel wall behind him. The room would rise, a moment of weightlessness, and then the feeling of vertigo as it dropped down again. The creaks of wooden crates and the crash of water against steel accentuated every pitch and fall of the room. He could smell the salt of the ocean and the odors of vomit and excrement of the other stowaways crowded in the hall. He turned to his mother and buried his face into her breast, taking in her familiar scent and the comfort of her embrace. "Mama, I'm scared." "Don't be scared, Dimitri. We are going to a better place, to America. Do you remember the tale of the Firebirds, Tsarevich Ivan and the Grey Wolf? The one where Grey Wolf helps Ivan become the Tsar?" His mother nodded. "There's a Grey Wolf in America who's going to help you. If you listen to him, he will lead you to great power. You can become a Tsar," she said with a smile. Dimitri felt both excitement and confusion. Looking around at the stowaways in the hall, he could see some of the other mothers were crying, holding their children as if it were the last time they would ever get to feel their warm beating hearts against their breasts. Others had dead expressions on their faces, resigned to whatever fate awaited them. When they got to America, they had to wait until dark before they were let out of the hull. They were herded off the boat and into vans by Russians in dark leather jackets and taken to a run-down tenement. The inside was dimly lit, and there was a faint smell of incense and sweat. Moans and the scraping of wood against wood seeped through the ceiling and thin walls. They were grouped in the lobby, and the women were put into a single-file line. A man in his late 50s came out of the main office. He was wearing a black suit, his graying hair slicked back with tonic and his face darkened by 5 o'clock shadow. He rubbed his gloved hands together, his deep blue eyes scanning the line of women. He went down the line and kissed each woman on the cheek in greeting, welcoming them to America. Though all the women thanked the man for his help, Some of their smiles did not reach their eyes. When he got to Dimitri's mother, she bowed her head in respect and told her son to give thanks. "Thank you, Grey Wolf." The man paused and looked at Dimitri with a cocked head, studying his slight frame and sunken face. "I'm sorry. I told my son you were going to help us like the Grey Wolf from the tale of the Firebirds, Tsarevich Ivan and the Grey Wolf. Please forgive him," said Dimitri's mother. The man laughed and ruffled Dimitri's hair with his gloved hand. "Ah, yes, I know the tale. There's nothing to forgive. The image fits, yes? You can call me Grey Wolf from now on," he said to Dimitri. There was an extended silence, and Joseph Baker set down his pen. "Do you know Tale of Firebirds, Tsarevich Ivan and Grey Wolf, Mr. Baker?" "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I've never heard it." "Story is not so important. With help of Grey Wolf, Tsarevich Ivan catches Firebird for his father and becomes heir to kingdom. Important part is why Grey Wolf helps Ivan. At beginning of quest, Grey Wolf attacks Ivan and eats his horse. Later, he feels sorry and decides to help Ivan in his search for Firebird. My mother did not pick Fairy Tale on accident. She knew Grey Wolf was going to eat her." "She knew what was going to happen when she got to America?" "Yes, it was all part of deal. She knew Grey Wolf was going to make her prostitute. They all did. That's why some mothers in boat were crying and holding their children close. These mothers became sex slaves to give their children chance at better life. A mother's love. There is your fairy tale magic, Mr. Baker." "Did you ever blame Grey Wolf for what he did?" Dimitri shook his head. "That night we got to America, my mother told me I was going to go with Grey Wolf. She told me to respect him, to follow him, and she told me goodbye." "You never saw your mother after that?" "The mother I knew from childhood died that night. What she became after, I don't think she wanted me to see." "But didn't you ever wonder about her? Did Grey Wolf give you updates on her condition?" Dimitri snarled, the corners of his mouth lifting into a scowl that sent a chilling ripple through the ink patterns on his face. "Would you want to know, Mr. Baker? Would you ask stories about how men held down your mother while they injected her with heroin? How they took money from other men who wanted to abuse her, to rape her? I'm sorry, Mr. Tishenko. I didn't—" Dimitri held up a blackened hand to stop him. "Forget it. It was a long time ago. Let us continue with tale, yes?" Baker removed his glasses to wipe the frames and nodded. "Grey Wolf took me under his wing. He taught me about life in America. He helped me become a powerful and respected man." "Was that part of the deal as well, you being recruited into the Red Mafiya?" "There are worse fates than being criminal, Mr. Baker. If we stayed in Soviet Union, we would probably be killed during fighting. In America, I had a chance for a happy life." Dimitri motioned for Baker to pick up his pen, and he returned to his story. After they had arrived in America, Dimitri spent most of his time working for Grey Wolf. He was sent as a messenger to different members of the organization. He delivered packages and met certain immigrants at the pier to give them directions to their new homes. Most importantly, he was allowed to watch. He learned how the world treated Grey Wolf. He learned about the respect he wielded and how he used it to influence others. He learned how to be the boss of a criminal organization. For his 15th birthday, Grey Wolf taught Dimitri the secret to his power, the tool he used to control others. "With this, Dimitri, you can make others do what you want. You can take their money. You can take their lives. With this power, you will be feared and respected," he said, showing him the gun he held in his gloved hands. Dimitri took the gun from Grey Wolf and felt the weight of it in his hands. He gripped the handle and turned it in his wrist, studying the lines of the barrel. He lifted his arm and looked down the sight, aiming at different objects around the room. He felt strong. He felt invincible. "You now have the power to control other people, but it comes at a price. Listen to me carefully, Dimitri. There are consequences for using this power, legal and moral. It is easy to take someone else's life, but it takes a strong will to be able to continue living your own life afterwards. Remember that." Dimitri nodded and hugged Grey Wolf, wrapping his arms around his neck and pressing his face into the rough material of his suit jacket. "Thank you." Dimitri began his criminal career with robberies and carjacking. For 2 years, he lined the pockets of himself and Grey Wolf with the money he stole from others. When he was 17, Grey Wolf felt Dimitri was ready to move up to wet work, and ordered him to kill a young Italian man named Antonio, who had defaulted on a loan.